Good morning everyone. Happy Saturday morning instead of Sunday. Yes, you heard it right. I am doing a Saturday morning stream instead of a Sunday because in about 9 hours I'm flying to Europe for 2 weeks. So you won't be seeing or hearing me for 2 weeks, taking a trip. Family members having a wedding, so that should be fun. So a day earlier, I thought I'd do a stream just before I left. I still got packing to do. Anyway, if you're here, if you would like to ask me a question, feel free to add 3 brightly colored emojis in front of your question to me like that. That's an example of, posing a question to me if you're in the live stream here. Otherwise, feel free to talk amongst yourselves. Let me know what you think about my microphone today. I really like it. It's one of my, I think this is my favorite microphone. I discovered the cheap version of it and it impressed me so much that I bought the good version of it. It was a little bit more expensive, but not much. If anyone's interested, I'm shooting on the Canon EOS R6 at 1080p, 30 frames a second. I used to shoot at 4K and get a downsample to 1080p for the stream, so it's smooth. You shouldn't notice any stuttering this time because I'm only streaming at 1080p, not at 4K, and getting my capture card to convert and downsample it to 1080. So this stream should sound and look better than usual. Anyway, let's see. Today's topic is, what are some absurd deal breakers? I was, the last week or so, I was having a chat with a couple of guys and how ridiculous some people have deal breakers. It's all well and good to have boundaries. I am always telling guys to speak up for themselves, have boundaries, know where you stand, politely, eloquently tell people who you are and where you stand, and you have nothing to feel guilty about having a stance on your beliefs and your values, right? Everyone else does, but there's too many nice people out there that keep their mouths shut and keep getting walked all over. If you don't state who you are and what your values are, then other people are going to impose them on you. So I've heard some really absurd deal breakers, and it's not so much absurd. It's first of all, hang on, let me pop out the chat so I can see all your comments and answer them. Okay. Remember, guys, if you want to ask me a question, make sure you add 3 brightly colored emojis like that to the question or comment you're directing to me that hopefully I can read out during the stream. Make it polite, make it civil, so YouTube doesn't put down the sledgehammer. So the conversation I've been having, we're laughing over it, and it's kind of like, how myopic are you if your standards are she has to be a fantastic cook or she has to be into my kind of movies? That's my deal breaker. It's almost a guarantee that you won't find, it's hard enough to find a compatible partner without looking for an exact mirror to you and every single little idiosyncratic interest that you have. But more than that, if they're compatible in every way, why do they need to be great at something? Because a lot of the dating advice and self-help is that, she needs to be great in bed, she needs to be a good cook, she needs to be there's all these kind of objective things, right? But let me ask you, if you came across someone finally that is like a best friend, someone you could be with, like everyone else was hard work, this person's really easy. But one of the things you had was that you wanted them to be really good at something or you didn't want them to have something. there's a lot of objective, say, red flags if you're not sure what kind of person they are. Like, for instance, you know, I was very weary of single mothers. You know, about the only single mothers I would date would be women whose children are old enough that they're independent, they're about to leave home, they don't live with her anymore, you know, they're grown teenagers, things like that, but not toddlers, children that need to be looked after, things like that, because obviously they're still going to be in her life. So, but if she was great, then really, is that a deal breaker? And what I've come to discover is that the so-called deal breakers are really there for the ones that don't feel right, the ones that you can't find anything to say. The dates are awkward. She might be hot, but the dates are really awkward. And that goes for anything. If you're not really in tune with what's compatible with you, who you are, what you need, what plugs into you and what doesn't, then those kind of, you know, single mother, body count, all those kind of, you know, arbitrary, objective things are very easy to say no to someone that's really not compatible with you. You feel it, but you can't really put your finger on it, and you don't really want to waste time, and they don't make you feel comfortable. So I think that a lot of those objective, say, red flags are good for people that really don't have anything else compatible with you. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments, you know. Pose your comments, put 3 yellow emojis or circles or whatever. Is my mic too sharp or too bassy, or is it just right? Let me know. You guys who, not that, if you're on your phone, mobile phone, don't answer, because you won't be objective enough to tell me if my audio is right. But if you're using really good headphones or you've got really decent speakers, let me know if my audio is too bassy or too tinny and too sharp and too clear that I need to subdue it. I think I've tuned this microphone. Oh, by the way, the microphone I'm using is the Lewitt 550DM dynamic microphone. Those of you who know anything about microphones know that Lewitt makes great microphones. And this is kind of a mid-professional tier broadcast microphone. Really love it. One of the very few that works with my voice. While I do have a lower register on my voice, I've also got sharp S's sometimes. I've got a little bit of sibilance on certain letters in my speech. But really, I'm looking for a mid-forward mic, mid to mid-upper. And this one's really, really good. And you can adjust this really well. Anyway, enough nerding out. Hi to the regulars. Luke, Vero, Big Old Donna, how are you? It's past 11 a.m. on this side of town. Well, it is here too. I was a couple of minutes late. Good morning, everyone. Boffin, how are you? Yeah, this is the other thing. If Boffin mentioned bad cook, ? I don't know. She eats out all the time. Well, this is something, again, if you don't speak, you'll never know. If you notice that about them, you find out very quickly on the first date or the first meeting. You know, if she likes to eat out, she doesn't cook, and she laughs about it. Oh, I'm a terrible cook. I burn water. I can't even make a piece of toast. I hate cooking. So if the person just loves going out and traveling and being pampered and has a very high maintenance lifestyle, and if yours is equivalent, fine. If you're that kind of person that's kind of a little hypocritical, that you expect her to live like a pauper, but you expect to live like a king. And it kind of goes across the board. There are differences between guys and girls, but there are just some human contradictions, like human hypocrisies, where you expect a lot and you don't give much at all or anything. You expect a Victoria's Secret model who's got the best temperament, a great housewife, nicest person in the world, but somehow she was unlucky and no one snapped her up until you, in your 30s or 40s, came across her. And all she wants to do is give, and she's a perfect person, or, you know, the perfect doormat or whatever, or has no interest. The uncomfortable truth is, the older you get, especially, everyone has formed into their own personality, and it's all about compatibility. And if you still don't speak up, if you're still the same teenager who was fumbling around and didn't know how to find your words and was insecure, and you still just locked into that, and you're just hoping for someone to treat you kindly. Everyone, as they get older, because of life, because of not wanting to be taken advantage of, we all start to hopefully politely stand up for ourselves, and the person you're on a date with will hopefully stand up for themselves politely and tell you who they are, just as you should. So my question in this stream is, what is a real deal breaker and what is an acceptable trade-off for a compatible person? This is something I talked about with the guys and with some women in my life, because I've mentioned before, my deal breaker before I was in my 30s was no smoking whatsoever. I will not accept one bit of it. And then I had, up until now, the best relationship I had until that point with someone who smoked, but everything else was good between us. I had a really nice relationship with her, and she smoked outside. You know, she made sure she didn't smoke around me because she knew people found smoking a disgusting habit generally. And she, you know, had chewing gum and things like that. So she was really respectable, and I really didn't notice it around her at all. She was a really polite, clean, considerate person, but she smoked. But I would have to be an idiot to say no to someone where everything else is compatible, but my arbitrary deal breaker for the cardboard cutout of a chick would still be firm when I meet someone that makes that an acceptable trade-off. It's different, and let's use the same relationship as an example. We broke up because she finally wanted to have kids, and she was denying it to me and herself for so long, and she couldn't deny it anymore. So that was an unacceptable trade-off. That was actually a deal breaker. And we broke up largely because of that. There were other reasons too. It wasn't just that, but that was large enough that anyone would understand that it's really at the core of someone's values. What do you want in your life? What kind of life would you need to change into and become a different person? I don't want kids. I can't pretend to want something that's so important. I can't just fake it for her. And people will say, well, if you loved her, you would. But then if she loved me, would she expect me to put myself in a life where I can never turn back, have a child that I could potentially resent her and the child and whatever? So it was one of those crossroads where I felt no ill will. I cared about her and I wished her the best. But that was a deal breaker. But an acceptable trade-off was her smoking at the start, which until I met her, it was a deal breaker. So I want guys and girls to think about those arbitrary, ridiculous deal breakers that you meet someone who has so many compatible qualities that could potentially be the best chance you've got with being with someone for long term or the rest of your life, or you people who want to get married and have kids, and you say no because the manosphere says so, because girl power says these are the rules. What's more insane? Your girl power or manosphere spurgs shouting as loud as you can about your arbitrary, stupid, high ideals no matter who's in front of you? Or is it insane to let someone go who it's hard enough, the luck to come across someone, and you toss them aside? You might as well, if someone says, here's $1 million, it's like, nope, I've got principles. Well, sometimes your principles are insane. Let me rephrase that. Your principles are really just trade-offs for the right person. For the person that doesn't have your values, yes, they're an easy way to move on, where it's hard work, you want it to work, they're attractive, you get along. I've said this before as well. Apart from that one relationship in my past, every other one was a variation of a nice person. We really got along. Otherwise, I wouldn't have committed to them. We really enjoyed spending time with each other, but we were incompatible people. Two nice, incompatible people with very different values in life, very different ways we wanted to live, lifestyles, directions, goals in the future, things like that. So if you are not compatible, 9 times out of 10, the people you do decide to go out with, because you do enjoy spending time with them, it won't work because you're not compatible. If you are compatible, most of your deal breakers, I'm telling you, most of your deal breakers become trade-offs because they don't matter as much. For the wrong person, you can make them into deal breakers. Oh, they left the cup this way, or they're messy, they leave their socks here and there. Oh my God, she chews with their mouth open or something. You know, you get irritated at the small things because there's something in your brain that's saying like, warning, warning, you just don't fit with this person. And until you start knowing about who you are, what your values are, how to articulate and stand up for what's important to you, and verbalize them and see them in action as you're talking to someone and living with them and trying to have a relationship, or, you know, the jobs you pick and the friends and the way you relate to the world and everything, until you start to kind of really engage with your thinking, with the way you voice those, you will never know the difference. You won't. So let me know your thoughts, and let me know any questions you guys might have, and I'll read some of them out. Hello. Karu says, stop flexing your mics. Vero says, if her fart smells, it's a deal breaker. Is it really? Is it? If that's the only thing you can point to that really irritates you about them, and on occasion, and if she tries not to, but on occasion, you know, nature calls and your stomach's hurting, that you're going to be in pain if you don't let it out. Okay, let me... Here's a comment by Quaz. How are you, Quaz? Hope you're doing well. Let's see. Quaz says, the deal breaker is violence, or even the mere willingness to endure. Violence is ubiquitous in our culture. It's good for men to understand this, not a gender issue. Yes, look, I have sometimes a bit of an issue with what is termed as violence. I think I was watching a documentary recently, and they were saying in America, 1/3 of women experience domestic violence or violence in some form. And my missus was saying like, oh, that's a lot. I didn't think it was that much. I said, yeah, calm down. You have to also understand what they term as violence, like a guy whistling at you, a guy not, you know, when you say, can you give me $10? And this guy says no, or he raises his voice, or he gets annoyed at you, or he says no to you. All of those are now termed as violence. But what I consider real violence is physical violence and just being argumentative. I wouldn't necessarily call violence language, but what would you call that actually? Like when someone has anger issues and they're very combative and they're very obstreperous. What's a common term for that? I don't know what it is. But the verbal and psychological equivalent to physical violence, I would agree, get out of those, like gaslighting and, you know, that kind of manipulation. I know a few older men, good, wise men. Why is it getting so dark? Come on. I knew a few older men, good, wise men who've had strong, deep, successful marriages. If love means anything, it's what they have. Yet many men claim it's a fantasy. Do you deny this love exists? No. I would say also Quaz would agree with me here that love is a skill. I've learnt over time through experience. Yes, there are objective truths with this stranger in the street. Everyone is a woman or a man with general traits that you have to specifically know if you spend the time talking to them and really listening. And that's what it becomes. All the self-help, the dating advice, all of that kind of stuff, it's true until you go on the date and then a woman becomes Mary or Jane. Then it's completely subjective. There's a lot of foundational stuff about biology and what women generally like, and you can assume a lot because it's generally true. Women tend to like flowers. Women tend to like chocolate. Women tend to like are more emotional, things like that. Without being condescending, you can assume all those things. And if I assume them on the date, if she gets offended, That also tells me a lot. This chick has no sense of humor. This chick is very political. She gets offended because she's been maybe taught to be offended, or maybe that's her experience. She's been sort of really traumatized in a certain way, and she doesn't like certain words and certain attitudes. But great, that tells me that we're not compatible on a very fundamental verbal relational level, right? But that really works itself out in the mix on the very first meeting. The woman or the man becomes Jane or John on the date. And this is what the dating advice and all the self-help tries to avoid. A very clinical, structural way to perfect a very subjective and personal thing that you're supposed to, in real time and in a present fashion, be engaged with. You really want to be excited to be there, listen to them listen to you. You really reveal yourself and insist that they reveal themselves in a very warm way. I'm not saying interrogate them like some, a lot of these clinical dating coaches and life coaches online, where you come across where you don't have a personality. You are academically dating. And how am I supposed to reveal who Jane is if she just comes as the girl power woman with only her surface appearance differentiating herself or making her likable to me in a very personal way? Relating to people is personal. It's subjective. It is scaffolded by a lot of information, but as long as you can balance it in a good way, like I said, if you've got these very hard and fast, almost biblical deal breakers, I mean, if you're very religious, fine, it can go hand in hand. But if you're just a more or less regular person that thinks that they can objectively discern between, you can take each situation as it comes, but you've got your boundaries and your values and your morals as hard stops that you won't go beyond. But anything beyond that, you can negotiate with a live and let live person, with a fair person, with a person who has a sense of humor that's easy to be around. You can work it out. People don't want to work it out. People want to perfect the finish line before they even start on the journey. It's kind of like me wanting, I want the end experience, like an example is now, I'm about to go for a 2-week trip to the Netherlands. It's like me wanting to have a video and a documented case now before I go, to read through it, watch the video, know exactly what it's going to be about. Not that I need surprises, but I want the end result known before I will ever take a foot, not just going forward or relating to that thing, relating to the experience. It's like, I'm not going. I want it perfect. Otherwise, I'm not going, because it's perfectly nothing now. I want it to be perfectly something by the end. I don't want it to be a variation of perfection, right? Because this is perfect now. I know this. Unless you tell me exactly what it's going to be like, I don't even want to engage, or I can't be bothered relating to the experience or the person on a date. This is what a lot of advice is about. And I understand trying to develop boundaries, but it is dumb. It is a 5-year-old's fear. Anyway, I've belabored that point. What's happened with... Okay. What's going on with this? It's not allowing me to scroll any further. Sorry, guys. I can't... here we go. Stupid. Yeah, look, Quaz disagrees with me. He says, we have had this conversation before and disagree. Getting screamed at, stolen from, otherwise is violence. Maybe it's me. I don't like definitions being muddied, and I think in modernity we have kind of made this catch-all phrase, and a lot of feminism has sort of made anything that makes mothers afraid, like, wrap it up in the most extreme word. It's the same as when they say, I literally died. Like, no, you didn't. Stop using the word literally. You know, if you just say, oh, I died in the experience, like, okay, we know you're being figurative, but if you add the word literally, you're reinforcing the wrong words to describe what the situation is. And as well, I will humbly disagree with you, Quaz. Like, I don't feel comfortable using the word violence, but I get where you're coming from, that they're all, that's why I was asking, what's the psychological and verbal equivalent to physical violence? Because whenever someone says violence, I don't think of psychological and verbal. I don't, but I'm not to say that I'm discounting what you're getting at either. Quaz says that men benefit from this definition. Well, yeah, in that case, I do see men taking it seriously, because when men don't take it as seriously as they know physical violence is, then they just live with it and they take it. So in that case, while I may not agree with using that term for psychological and verbal abuse, I would agree that men would benefit from this definition, because it would make them take it as seriously and defend themselves in the same way they would learn to articulate themselves like you and I would, because it is that important to the happiness and tranquility of your life. Whereas if someone's psychologically abusing you, I feel better with the word abuse, or psychological abuse, to kind of to clarify the term, where if someone's psychologically pounding you on the head, your life is not happy. You're tolerating a lot. You're being abused. But yeah, look, guys would benefit from knowing that. Then maybe they would stand up for themselves a lot more and a lot quickly. A lot more quickly. Kirkut says, hi, Human. I hope you have a good trip to the Netherlands. I'm from there. What will you do there? It's 3:30 a.m. here. A family's wedding. My missus's, is that a term? Her sister is getting married, and we're going to have aside from the wedding itself, everything else is just going to be hanging around and living like a local, going to, what's the local supermarket called? Obertain? Obertain? I can't pronounce that properly. That's probably going to be my favorite thing, going into the local supermarket. And you guys have really great chips, or as the Americans call crisps, you know, those dried chips in the bag. You have these really great ones with paprika, the Lay's version. We don't have it here. We've got barbecue flavor, which is really shit. Not shit, but it's not as good as the paprika version that you guys have in Holland. And I'm going to enjoy the Dutch snack bar as well. That's going to be fun. Dutch snack bar, I initially didn't like it. I thought, what's the big deal? But it really grows on you quickly. So I'm looking forward to Dutch snack bar. And it's the Dutch equivalent of McDonald's, put it that way. Photos of it don't do it justice. The experience of eating it does it justice. It's like, you know, when you eat Japanese, you can order bits and pieces, and you can arrange them and have like a whole bunch of different things on your plate. You can organize like little snacks as a sushi meal or a Japanese meal. It's the equivalent. The Dutch have kind of chips and deep fried things and sausages and croquettes and all these like little wonderful dishes that you can order separately. And that's their snack bar. It's really, really good. Anyway, I'm going to be in the south of Holland. So I landing in Amsterdam, but then quickly spending all my time in the south of Holland. Yeah, I think defining violence with stigma as harm or threat is completely adoptable. Yes. Or again, with me, I would qualify it with terming it as mental and psychological, verbal, mental, psychological abuse. because that's specifically what it is. And men really need to take that seriously, because a lot of men just brush it off their shoulders because they don't see a bruise afterwards. But to me, it's worse than a bruise. I would rather be punched by a guy than live with the lifelong psychological bruise of what happened to you in childhood via your mother, via girlfriends who really left a scar that will never, ever heal. But you think, oh, well, they were just words and feelings. And women do feelings, guys don't. Once we leave that, we're fine. It's like, no, you're not. It's an anchor it's an anchor behind you. So whether or not guys can glean this from my comments, I take the psychological aspect, the thinking part. If you want to define my channel, it's learning to think and speak better as a guy to have a better life. That's all it is. And a large part of it is relating to people. And the only way you're going to relate to people better is not cross your fingers and hope that they relate to you as nicely as you're passively trying to relate to them as a mute. It's mute. How do you pronounce that? Moot point? I know it's a moot point, but mute is someone who can't speak or won't. Anyway, yeah, I'm completely focused on the importance of verbal and psychological relating and learning to communicate and think better so you can have a better psychological relational life with people, and how you speak and like how you engage with the world, with what comes out of your mouth, and letting people in the world see exactly who you are in no uncertain terms by telling them, and then also saying no, or I'll think about it, or that's not for me, but doing it respectively. Because if people don't like it, it's not your problem if you are communicating honestly. It is really not. If they get offended by not what you said, but how you said it, because it doesn't make, the snowflake feel good, it's not my problem. I don't have to say everything that makes me a mirror to you. I'm another person, just as other chicks are other people as well. Just because you want her because she looks good, she may not be relationally good for you. And so many guys have tried to pound a square peg into a round hole, figuratively speaking, guys, that they blame the round hole. Think about that. If you're a square peg, stop trying to pound yourself into a round hole where there's pain after pain after pain, and you're blaming the nature of the round hole. They're not going to change. The sooner you get to know that your square peg needs to fit another square peg, regardless of how it looks, regardless, right? I'm not saying you need to pick and stay with and commit to the square hole. It's like the answers people don't want to hear. I know I'm speaking for me. I tried and I tried and I tried. But then when I started to try with maybe what was not as exciting or what was not as romantic as what everyone else was telling me to go about, then my life made a lot of sense. It's not a great story. This is the romantic bullshit too, is that most people's idea of romance is what's going to make the best story you can tell someone afterwards. Oh, we met here and there, and like, who cares? I care about, like, you two are great. I don't care if your parents set you up, really. If that's embarrassing to you, if you can't stand up for how good you are together because you have to make up a bullshit story. How many times I remember when I used to meet girls online, them saying, we'll tell people we met here and there. It's like, why? Why are you embarrassed? Why do you want to have a great story? That is a silly thing when I think about it. Afterwards, you get creative and insisting on a story that sounds good to other people, rather than insisting on a story beforehand that may be mundane, but the story, it actually has a sensible beginning, middle, and end that will get you to the end of a compatible relationship. But you don't. But you think you can just dispense with planning a good story and setting, a sensible course. This is most people, and I've seen this and I've tried it sometimes when I do videos. I see people doing vlogs and I think, well, all it is just put a camera in front of you and you just film yourself. You click upload and it's fantastic and everyone likes it. No, you have to plan. You have to have some semblance of a sensible structure to a story. You have to adapt along the way. Maybe it may not work, but I just think people, their romantic view is to have a sensible, a better story than the next person to tell afterwards to family and friends and strangers. Hopefully there hasn't been any hiccups or jerks in the stream. Boffin says, do you own wooden shoes? No, I don't. Yeah, the Netherlands, Holland are known for their windmills and their wooden clogs. I didn't see any wooden clogs except as souvenirs in shops, like, little ornamental kind of ones. Same here. In our tourist shops, all we have are like little koalas and kangaroos and Aboriginal art and things like that, like flags and postcards and things like that. There are cliches. Don't generalize. See, I'm okay with the generalization of kangaroos and koalas and platypuses. Who cares? Well, Karu makes a point. He says, depending on the size of the hole, the shape of the peg is irrelevant. The size of the peg is irrelevant if the hole is big enough. So technically, Karu is one of these people, I can say anything. I'll say the sky is blue and he'll say, well, I disagree. You can have clouds in the sky sometimes. You're not wholly wrong. So look, my question is, just be careful of your deal breakers, your supposed religious, regardless of which there are no compromises. Before I even meet a chick, these are my absolute deal breakers. Which ones are real deal breakers and which one of them are really acceptable trade-offs? If everything else is great and perfect, she's compatible, you're okay. Like, I'll give my case. You're okay if she smokes, but if she's respectable and you don't really notice it. You're okay if she has a kid, but her kids are grown up and they don't live with her, or they're adults and you never have to be the father. It's only about you and her. It's not really baggage. It's just something, it's a trade-off that you have to live with. I don't know, she has a missing small finger. I'm just making things up. Is it really going to make a difference? Like, she's not physically perfect. So, and if you told this story, you said, I had all these problems with women. I met this one chick. She was perfect. I couldn't fault her, but she had this, she burnt half her eyebrows off when she was a kid. So her eyebrow looked really weird. Really, that's it? That's it? Why? Because you'd be embarrassed in front of your male friends, or, what are your standards? And should you be commended for having really good, righteous, virtuous standards? Or are you insane with the perfection you want that's going to guarantee you don't meet anyone? So you complaining about not meeting any, like, we can easily laugh at some of these girl power chicks who say, oh, where are all the good men, when their standard is six-pack, 6-figure salary, over 6 foot tall, like, just everything is like the 0.05 percentile of the population that frankly wouldn't even look at this couch walrus that's imposing these standards onto men. People aren't realistic. And this is the other thing. Are you reasonable in your standards, what you expect, what your deal breakers are? Because what these things are, if you're very stubborn on them, when you go on a date and you insist upon them, a person who might be compatible to you is just going to put up the walls. And you're going to make them into probably things you don't want to. They could have been 80% good for you. you impose yourself religiously with your manosphere or your girl power politics or whatever it is. If you can't show up as Bob, Bill, or Frank with the sort of the foundations, the calm, stoic foundations, it's kind of like, this is the perfect analogy, right? If you're a black belt in a martial art, you can take care of yourself. And so you go walking through life, not looking for a fight, but you know in your back pocket, you're good. You don't have to be afraid of anything. These guys leading with the defense of the manosphere and the perfection of biology and high value male and all this bullshit, I just see a lot of fear in these men that are too afraid to show up as themselves with the confidence of their black belt. All the information that's very rational, I can rationally speak on all of this stuff in the manosphere as long as I'm talking to a sensible person that can place it where it's supposed to be, and be able to contextualize it where it fits. You can't impose it in places. I mean, you can, and you'll ruin parts of your life, and no one will want to be around you. But if you are such a solipsistic and myopic person, you won't have many friends, let alone find anyone you can be with in a romantic sense. Any questions or super chats, guys? If you're here during the stream, make sure I'm making a concerted effort not to say the word That's one thing that I'm trying to get better at. I was going to say something, but I won't. Ooh, clouds. I've got a variable ND on this adapter, and it's so touchy. You touch it and it just like slides. Canon, why didn't you just make it kind of lightly clickable? Why didn't you put some resistance? It just kind of spins like a... Anyway. So ask yourself, if you're already in a relationship, or like when you're finding out whether you're compatible, are you being asked to compromise, or are you being asked to change? That is a good way to tell the difference between deal breakers, very hard values you have, that you know who you are as a person, and the person is asking you to change. I gave you the example of myself with a good relationship I had in my past. I compromised very easily with her being a smoker because she was very easy to be around as a smoker. She smoked away from me, and she was very respectful about it. So it wasn't a deal breaker. It was a very, very, it was a, what's the word? It was a very acceptable trade-off to her. But when she asked me to change, to become a father, to change my life from what and who I am now largely my whole life, to become a completely different person, it was too much to ask. That would be asking me to change my values, who I was, what I wanted, and to completely make my life about her. If I was open to kids, or I wanted kids, but just not now, could have been a different conversation. I might have compromised the timeline for her just to kind of meet her halfway. Stop saying that. Anyway, I'm focusing on it too much. If I say it, I say it. So really look at, are you being asked to change, or are you so stubborn that you won't compromise anything? You will not meet people part way. So a lot of the dating advice is so defensively afraid that if you're a girl, you ask guys to have an impossible standard for you because you're afraid to be hurt. Guys have these impossible standards now for, they're not impossible, they're unrealistic because they're afraid to be hurt. And I get it, but I know from experience, again, do what you want. Spend your time how you want. Waste your years or use them constructively. But for me, I became less afraid where I work things out mentally, learn to articulate it, and learn to stand up for myself. I didn't have to be fearful of unknown things that would be coming down the track. I would make them known and solidify them in conversations with people that I was with. I want to know where I stand. If you're important to me, I want to know exactly where I stand. If a little red flag pops up or an amber one in the background, it's like, let's get rid of it. I do not want any ghosts haunting me mentally. I do not avoid things because I want to keep the water smooth. Do not be the person that is agreeable to the degree that you're always just smoothing the waters over. Don't do that. Articulating your values, how you speak politely, always talking about things, not ignoring amber or red flags, especially. Anything pops up, you talk about it. You want to know where you stand. Don't cleverly interpret through all your knowledge that you think you know. You're a black belt in your head, but you're not really a black belt out in the world. You need to have the confidence through exposing everything in the conversation. Again, I'm butchering this. I hope you know where I'm coming from. Let me see some of the comments. I'm going to switch to, like, why wasn't it live chat before? Look, Big Ol says, remember him, the female sexual imperative is to tame a man to change him. It's part of the deal. Generally, yes, but I don't care. Seriously, guys might say I'm insane. A lot of this biological stuff is factual. It's true. But if I go on a date and this woman is leading with and dominating in this part of her personality, I don't want to be with her. I don't. I want Jane to be a female or accept her as a female. I don't want a female to happen to be named Jane. I want the individual where the kind of the equalizer, if you look at this as an equalizer and parts of her character, anger, temperament, conscientiousness, so like just fairness, niceness, consideration, self-reflective, her equalizer is adjusted to acceptable levels for me, then that's fine. But I only know that if I go into it really listening to her listening to me, and making an assessment of all that. Really taking responsibility and saying, can I live with this person? She's got a bit of a temper. Is it that bad, or is it kind of funny, given her personality? Is it really a temper, or is it someone who loses their patience in a funny way? So you really need to pay attention to the kind of person. You cannot plan the perfection of any relationship beforehand until, and with me, I've said it before, I'll say it again, everything to me, just have the umbrella, everything in life is a relationship, from girlfriends to jobs to your routines, your health, everything. If you have a crap relationship with your health, you don't want to meet it halfway and go for a walk once a week, or, curb the amount you eat and things like that, then you're not having a fair relationship with your diet, with your health, with your exercise. Then we know why it's lopsided. We know why you're fat. We know why through your laziness, you're not meeting whatever thing you're relating to at least halfway or part way. If you give more, usually, if you're relating openly and honestly to the thing or the person, you get more back. It's a good feedback loop. Or if you start to give more and you get less back, or it doesn't get back to you, you know that the hobby or the thing isn't for you. You're not having a good relationship. You don't get much back from it. Or if it's a person, they're not for you. You're giving far more than you're getting back from it. So it doesn't matter if it's a thing or a person, but people want to plan the perfection of this thing and be guaranteed a certain outcome. I'm not an outcome-oriented person. I'm a process-oriented person. I have the most fun in these videos in the conversations beforehand, in the journaling, in the writing, in the conversations I have with you guys, in the editing in my videos. I don't like talking to camera. I do now because I'm engaged. I'm aware that I'm actually engaged with people, even though I can't see them. But when I turn that camera on to me and I'm recording a standalone video just with myself, I find it the most uncomfortable because I'm not relating in real time. There is no sort of real time relating with anybody. I'm faking it. And until you get to the point of insisting and liking relating to things and people in your life in real time, you're not going to enjoy that process. So that might be a question to ask yourself. Are you a goal-driven person who's always got their eye on the prize? Or realistically, you do, like myself, I point myself in a direction. There's a target I would like to get to, but I'm very well aware of what's going to happen between A and B. B is a necessary endpoint that I need to direct myself to, right? I direct myself in a direction, but that's not the end all be all. It's so that I can enjoy the process as time goes forward, getting to that thing. Because once I get there, once you get married, once you get the girlfriend, guess what? Something comes next. So if you're used to the process, or the cringy colloquial term journey, be journey and process oriented, try to be. And in being journey and process oriented, you're going to enjoy the maintenance of language, of listening, of knowing what this person meant. If you don't, you speak, you clarify. You're engaged in this feedback loop process of engaging with people or your hobbies or anything you want to do. The real-time choices you're making, rather than I make my choice now, I set it, forget it, put it there, and I can just be a zombie watching Netflix and just crossing my fingers and letting life drag me around. I hope that made sense. I think I did. Anyway, any more questions, guys? How long have we been going? We've been going for nearly an hour. Last stream for a couple of weeks. I'll see you in probably in 3 weeks. So I'll be gone for 2 weeks, leaving tonight. I'll be back on the Sunday late night in 2 weeks. So I'll probably see you the following week. I'm halfway through editing another video, which I'm happy the way it's turning out, but you guys won't see it for a few weeks. So feel free to add any comments under this, like, subscribe. I'll try and add maybe a thought or two and let you know my musings and where I'm at, maybe from Holland. But you won't actually see a video or a stream from me for a couple of weeks. After this stream, if you have a microphone, I'll join you for a short time on Gilded, on the Gilded server. If you don't know how to use it, jump on YouTube and watch a short video of how to use Gilded. If you've got a microphone, learn how to use Push to Talk. And a bunch of us got on there after the stream last week and had a bit of a chat. If you've got time, jump on there and I'll chat to you. I can't chat for very long because I've got to pack. I've packed all like my little bits and pieces, but I haven't packed any clothes. I'm really bad at packing when it comes to all the little things I take for granted, like chargers for your phone, eye drops, just all the things I have handy in the place I have handy, little things like that. So over the course of the week, I've just been laying them on the table, but now all I have to lay in my suitcase is clothes, like the suit for the wedding and things like that. Karu says, both compromise and change can be positive. The idea of my comfort above all is an easy excuse for not washing dishes. It's different if you need pills to stay alive. That's right. I think in people's desperation for perfection, especially beforehand, and I understand the preparation, you want to prepare where you want to stand. It's good to prepare beforehand, but you don't want to be kind of inflexible, where you lead with a pre-prepared persona on the date where the person actually doesn't see under the skin, you know? Have all the preparation in the back. Do not lead with it. Do not always religiously force it down people's throats as your axioms, as your rule book, as your inflexibility. Because the person, let me tell you, if the person that tries to stay with you and tries to relate with you knows that you're just black and white on certain issues and they tolerate it, there'll be points in life where they know they can't discuss certain things, or they can't kind of hold you close and rely on your support and discussion, because they know you're just a hard no and you don't want to listen to it, and you don't want to meet them halfway, or, you know, have their back in a little. They'll be doing those parts of life on their own. You'll create distance with the person you're trying to relate to and have a relationship with. So do it at your own peril. Be stubborn. But if you can't be realistic and fair, like, for instance, my woman does the housework, right? But if she's doing a lot of stuff and she's got a lot of work from her job and she's doing it, and like she doesn't have, if there's a glass to be washed, I'll wash it. If you need to do like some bits and pieces to help her, but if they're being lazy and they want you to do everything, that's different. But being able to help your partner is something that's not your job. Fine. Who cares? On the whole, do you want to lubricate your relationship to a degree where it's good for both of you? So for instance, with me and Steph, I think I haven't mentioned her name before, but her name's Stephanie. For us, the relationship is the most important thing, above me and above her. I insist that she doesn't come first. The relationship does, then her. And I don't come first. The relationship comes first and then me. I might have mentioned it to Karu, but you have to be, you can't just be single with your inflexible, stubborn, pig-headed me rules. It's all my frame and she needs to be completely in my frame, and she doesn't exist. She's effectively a living, breathing, walking, talking doll that just says yes, yes, yes to everything. My perfect dream. And then when I change, miraculously, she changes her yeses too. Who would have thought? Yeah, great. You don't have a person, you've got an empty vessel. All right, guys, let's wrap it up. I don't see any more questions unless my feed isn't coming in properly. Let's see. Oh. Here's a comment. Real deal breakers: if she does not put in any effort, is inconsistent, and wanting to use your time, labor for their own goals, an overtly solipsistic, selfish person. Yeah, and a lot of guys, it just blows my mind that because they've got a hot chick, and you realize that the older you get, these hot chicks are still on the market because even the most reasonable guy can't tolerate it anymore. Or she just monkey branches to the next guy because she just wants to stay the perpetual teenager, the hot chick in school. There are guys that call them the prize for a very short amount of time. The person that you'll consistently call a prize is a person that's not just compatible, but that's just has a good temperament and a good personality. How many hot chicks have a really kind personality? How many, the dichotomy of women complaining about going for these exciting bad boys, but they're not nice. Well, they're not. Of course they're not. They might be sexy and exciting, but the two you don't find the jackpot in one person. They want two opposite things to reside in the same place. And it's not just luck. It's almost impossible, what chicks wanting like some really dominant alpha CEO leader of a guy who's a really nice guy, who's in tune with her feelings, who remembers every birthday and occasion. Come on. Really, the extremes really don't complement. It's kind of like oil and water. the degree to which it's oil and the degree to which it's water, you know, sometimes there's a trade-off there that you can live with. But again, it comes down to what is really a deal breaker for you in your life. If you have to have a very flashy lifestyle, ladies, if the creature comforts and materialism and those holidays and expensive cars and you want your kids to go to the best private schools and all that sort of stuff, well, I'm sorry, the chances of you meeting a really nice guy who's very protective, who you're proud of, who's sexy, who's intelligent, and also who may be having to put up with your less than optimal personality, I'm sorry, you need to be realistic. How, to what degree are you meeting them halfway? You want all these things? How many of those qualities can you reciprocate from a female's point of view? All the things that you want as a woman, how much of those things are you realistically, do you offer to the guy? Like all the things he would like, because he's got a lot of stuff he's offering as a, I knew, while I might not be rich, objectively, I do have a lot of good qualities that I could offer. I always knew that. It wasn't hyperbole. It wasn't because my mum said I was great. It's because objectively I knew. I knew objectively. I'm not saying I'm fantastic. I knew I had a lot of great base qualities as a boyfriend, as a partner. And, you know, despite not having a lot of money, I knew that a lot of those foundational qualities that would make long-term relationships worthwhile, I check a lot of them. My personality is very, very accommodating. It takes a lot for me to get angry. I'm very aware of fairness, but yeah, you just need to be very realistic about your standards, guys. A lot of people don't trust themselves, so they trust the like, you know, high value male. She needs to be this. She needs to be a good cook. Without even knowing what they want. What do you want first, realistically and fairly, and how is it compatible with people out there? If you're really looking for a unicorn, and this is what a unicorn is to me, you give nothing, you're a 1 or a 0 as a guy, objectively speaking, in terms of like being a person, what you can offer. You're nothing. You want a 10. That is looking for a unicorn. And there's so many guys out there and women in the advice, self-help dating world that think, look, why is this so hard to get? Because you're looking for a unicorn. You are a terrible person looking for someone who will accommodate your terribleness, that you can walk all over and then not respect, because no one respects the doormat, and you just keep going through that irrational loop. So know yourself, be fair, be reasonable, you know, be reasonable. And if you know who you are and your values, know the difference between an acceptable compromise and meeting people halfway and someone expecting you to change into somebody else, and you know you can't. We've done it before. I've done it before, where you're young and naive. You haven't dated much. You haven't tried and, you know, seen how you can love and what is relatable to you, what works, what doesn't, what kind of personality you have and what kind of lifestyle is really comfortable for you. So know thyself is not just a throwaway statement. It's really important. Yes, Roman, I know you and your partner are happy in your bed this morning after his long trip away. I'm happy for you. Thank you. Yes, I will have a good time. I will relax. I will eat a lot of nice food. Yeah. So for anyone else, any last super chats before we end this stream, or any last comments? If you would like to leave a comment, make sure you add 3 smiley faces or circles before your message or comment to me, and I'll read it online. Or alternatively, make sure you super chat me if you're here live, and we'll wrap this stream up very shortly. And also check out my recent videos that I did on this related topic, where are you expecting too much from your partner? And also, have you lost the realistic you know, realistic, sensible viewpoint of what's good enough, what's normal. Like, we have all these high standards that we are trying to protect ourselves. We are fearful of being taken advantage of and experiencing pain and discomfort. And that's another subject. People scared to death of mild discomfort that would allow you to learn something going forward. It's fairly painless in the grand scheme of things, but people are just looking for absolute safety, and they avoid living and experiencing anything because they don't want to feel a little bit of discomfort. And remember, mild discomfort is finding a better path also that you're glad you found, but you wouldn't have found it if you didn't open your cage door and step outside and feel a little bit uncomfortable in a different environment. I was never a traveler, but when I first went to meet Stephanie, it was uncomfortable, but it was a good uncomfortable. When I make videos, I kind of feel uncomfortable. There's a lot resisting me. There's a lot of comfort zone wanting me to do nothing and procrastinate. But I know if I just do the uncomfortable thing and recognize what's different between being uncomfortable and danger. We make the two equivalent at our own peril, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, for those of you with a microphone and a little time after this stream, join me on my Gilded server. Links below here or in my About section on my YouTube channel, and I will jump on. We had a nice little chat last week, and yeah, hope you enjoyed the stream. I'll catch you in a few weeks. You won't need to hear the word anymore. And yeah, I love this mic. I really do like this microphone. So nothing more to say other than adios, and enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you soon. Bye.